Hello everybody, it's Star Raptor. I'm back for Recap of Thrones for Season 7. This is Episode 1 titled Dragonstone. So if you are new to Recap of Thrones, what I do is I break down the episode, talk about the characters, the locations, then I go into the strengths of the episode, as well as the weaknesses of the episode, and I do some speculation, and I give you a quote of the episode that I like the most. So getting into the rundown, here we go. So we have Arya, who gets more revenge on the Freys and shares some food with the Lannisters. Then we have the Night's King, who continues his march with the army of the White Walkers closer and closer to the wall. Then we have Bran and Mira, who arrive at Castle Black. We have Jon and Sansa, who disagree on the direction for the army of the North now that Jon is the king of the North. So then we go to Cersei, who is seeking an alliance with Euron Greyjoy, and he yearns for a marriage that she doesn't want. Then we go to the Citadel, where Sam is slaving away at his little minuscule duties to become a Maester, and he gets curious and he finds this book, and it says that Dragonstone, the location, is on top of a mountain of dragon glass. We then go to the Hound, who continues his adventures with the Brotherhood without banners and comes across some familiar faces and also discovers something in the flames. And finally, we end this episode at Dragonstone with Daenerys making her triumphant return to her birthplace. So I'm going to go into my strengths of the episode now. I think that this episode opened in a great way. First off, I was watching it with a couple buddies of mine, and they show Walder Frey, and immediately I thought, what is this, some kind of flashback? Usually Game of Thrones doesn't do a cold opening, so it was kind of interesting. And as things slowly start to turn the events, and we see that he doesn't take a drink of that wine, immediately I was like, okay, there's something going on here. And it was just awesome that Arya Stark is continuing to be that little murder girl that's just going around slaying everybody, getting revenge. The North remembers. Hell yeah, just what a awesome violent way to start off this season. Next thing I want to talk about concerning Arya is actually that campfire scene that she has later on in this episode. I thought this is one of those rare occurrences in Game of Thrones where the characters, they kind of forget what's going on in the world around them, and they just kind of, have some humor, some laughs. And the whole time I was on the edge of my seat because I didn't know if these Lannister men were actually going to be attacking her at all. But it turned out to be a very nice scene, something we don't see often in Game of Thrones. Another thing I really liked was Euron's warship. That thing was badass. As you know, I'm a fan of the Greyjoys, so I really love seeing that. Speaking of Euron, I feel like he's the next Oberyn Martell. He's got this charisma about him. He's talking to the queen, and he doesn't care what's coming out of his mouth, even though he's surrounded by people with weapons and she can execute him for speaking out against her, all this stuff. And he is just one of those guys that's really fun to listen to. Something else I really enjoyed was going to Samwell Tarly, and he is having to deal with all this crap, literally. Like, he has to do the bedpans, but then he's also putting out this brown stuff that looks just like the crap, so it's just hilarious. And speaking of Samwell Tarly, I really liked how in Game of Thrones throughout, there was one particular scene in this episode when he's talking with the Archmeister, and well, he's in the middle of an autopsy, so you have them having this dialogue. He's taking the liver, weighing it, he's taking the heart and weighing it, and that's one thing that Game of Thrones does great, is really making some dialogue interesting when they make the characters, the actors, do other kind of things around that, which are usually pretty interesting. Something I really enjoy is the Hound. He is getting more and more, I'm getting more empathetic for his character. Sandor Clegane is a guy that I just absolutely hated at the start of this series, and his arc has gotten really great. So what he does in this episode is, if you didn't realize, those two dead corpses in there were actually the people that he left for dead in season 4 when Arya was at his side. They decided that they were going to steal their money and leave in the morning after those people harbored him for like the night. So now Sandor Clegane is feeling a lot of regret. He ends up he ends up burying them. So it's something to see that the character is getting more sympathetic. He is really turning 180 degrees, especially because it was really ironic that he hates fire, and while he's looking through the flames because of Beric Dondarrion and Thoros of Myr saying, look, you gotta look through the flames, and he actually foreshadows what is to come. You have the army of the White Walkers going what sounded like past the fists of the First Men. They're on their way to Eastwatch by the Sea. It's going to be one hell of a battle coming up. And finally, I can't talk about this episode without talking about Daenerys and arriving at Dragonstone. I thought it was really, really powerful. We have been seeing this character trying to make this journey for 6 seasons now, and well, there was no dialogue. It was just silence, just the music, and it was just really awesome seeing her finally taking those first steps, feeling the sand of her ancestors, of her birthplace, Daenerys Stormborn. Obviously, she was born on Dragonstone during a storm, so it's really cool. Now I'm going to go to my weaknesses of the episode. Really, there was only one weakness, and it has to do with Dragonstone. I just don't understand why the Baratheons didn't leave any men at that particular castle to kind of... I know that Stannis is dead and her army is scattered, but still, not one living soul on there, especially Daenerys was like leading the way of the procession. Like, there could have been anybody that would have just stepped in and assassinated her. Even the Grey Worm, he was way off in the back, but that's besides the point. So I'm going to go into some speculation. There's two things I want to talk about. First off, I think Jon and Sansa might have something going on between the two, especially now that Jon is not technically her brother. He's more of like her cousin at this point. So I've seen something like some kind of bickering back and forth. You know, she grabs his arm, and it's just something that it sounds like disgusting, but I could see it possibly happening. Another thing I want to talk about is the gift that Euron is referring to give to Cersei to kind of, you know, get this marriage going. So I think it could be Tyrion because, well, Cersei's #1 enemy is her brother right now, especially considering that he is the hand of the queen of Daenerys Targaryen, who is their direct opposition. So I could see her wanting him dead. So I think that could be what he's referring to. It should be interesting. So the last thing I want to talk about is the quote of the episode. This comes from Arya Stark. In the beginning of the episode, she says to Walder Frey's wife, "When people ask you what happened here, tell them the North remembers. Tell them winter came for House Frey." What a powerful message. What a powerful thing to say at the beginning of this episode, at the beginning of the season. It's so great seeing the Starks coming back now after all this time, you know, being downtrodden since season 3 with the Red Wedding, and now they are at the peak of their existence right now. The Lannisters got to be scared for the North because the North remembers. So in all, you can really see the wheels turning now, guys. You can really see that this is coming to the end of Game of Thrones. All these characters now are kind of in centralized locations, be it either King's Landing or Winterfell or now Dragonstone with all of Daenerys' cadre. So it's really cool seeing that we're getting to the end. So that is going to do it for Recap of Thrones for Season 7, Episode 1, titled Dragonstone. Now it's time for you guys to talk in the comment section below. What did you think of this episode? What was your favorite moments? What was some things that you enjoyed, such as, did you like to see what Samwell was doing? Did you like to see what Daenerys was doing at Dragonstone? Also, speculation. Do you think Jon and Sansa might get together? Do you think that Euron might actually deliver Tyrion's head on a plate to Cersei? Let me know in that comment section below. Also, if you're new to the channel, welcome. I have plenty of other content. I have lots of Star Wars content which I release weekly, so check that out. I do lots of comic reviews, novel reviews, the TV shows reviews. I also have movies, TV, and games on the channel. I'm gonna be trying to release a Recap of Thrones every Monday. It might be a little later depending on the week, so you can always look forward to that. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of those future videos. So I'm Star Raptor. I want to thank you guys for watching, and bye bye. So did you like the video? Then make sure you rate it a thumbs up, and if you did that, go over there, hit that Star Raptor head so you subscribe to my channel. Doing so will keep you up to speed on all of my latest content. Speaking of which, you can see a couple of my recent uploads down below. I'm also on social media, so what are you waiting for? Let's start nerding out.